This conference will now be recorded.
Yes, I can hear fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm going to call the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee Thursday, April 14th meeting to order. We have a quorum here: Randy Bottleson, Carol Pankow, Joe Schofield, and myself. And on the line is Doug Zanter. I would suggest that we may want to approve having Doug be able to vote at the meeting, get that done.
I will move
Okay.
to allow him to vote in this meeting.
Okay. Second? Will anybody second?
I'll second.
Second. Moved by Carol, seconded by Randy. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
It's approved 4-0. Doug, you can vote. You can vote. Okay. March 10th, 2022 meeting minutes for approval. Any changes, revisions on the minutes? I must admit, I think these minutes they're getting better.
I did look through them and I didn't see anything,
No.
so I will move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Joe seconds. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the March 10, 2022 meeting minutes as published? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Doug, are you on there too?
Aye.
Okay. 5-0. The minutes are approved. Neither Scott nor Glenn are here to comment on the financials, but I should mention at this time that Scott has an emergency involving his wife. It sounds quite serious. And we're hoping for the best. I guess she had a seizure last night. Is that right, Chris?
Correct.
And they discovered that she has a brain tumor, which is going to be operated on in the next couple of days. Is that right? Tuesday. So Scott is not with him. I'm sure everybody's hopes and prayers and thoughts are with Scott at this point. Looking at the financials, we still look like we're in pretty good shape. We're under budget as far as our expenses are concerned, and well over on the net income. So are there any questions or discussions about the financials? If not, I'll note that Mr. Grega has just joined the meeting. Those are now 6 of the present.
I got behind the school bus.
Okay. Boardwalk access limitations. I put this on the agenda just so I could inform you as to where that stands. Right now, the board has had a memo from Tony Pierce about the temporary or the current rules for accessing the boardwalk. And they have to, they're going to have to review those. What's happened is ADA considerations have come into play, and they have to be taken into account as they approve the rules. I should say, however, that the rules that would be approved, and that would be at next week's board meeting, will be temporary, that we will then have the opportunity to get our oar in the water as to what kind of permanent access rules we want. And we've been saying this from the beginning, that we would work with the staff at the CDD and also get input from the community association as to what we want the permanent rules to look like. It's unclear what the South Florida Water Management District would approve at this point. There was a meeting with the South Florida Water Management District, and Bob, do you want to comment on that?
Bob Geppert from the GSCDD. Yeah, we participated in the meeting, and apparently not only has our community had a lot of comments about ballards or not ballards, but a lot of those comments have also gone to South Florida. So the result of the meeting was we discussed the current status. We asked what would it take for consideration of a change, and keeping in line ADA compliance materials and things like that, which the board over there wasn't the least bit interested in. They considered that to be a totally separate and independent topic. But nevertheless, it's important to us, it's important to our attorney. But the path forward is they gave us certain requirements that they would need to consider changing anything. So we made a summary of the meeting. There's minutes of the meeting. They're currently being reviewed by South Florida as well as staff, the participants. I finished looking at my portion of it. I have no issues with it. But once that's all done, everybody agrees what's got to go, then we'll come back probably to this group and to the board to chart a path forward. Do we want to continue pursuing this? Because it will require maybe some environmental studies and possibly mitigation in the future. There's some components to it, and they're not going to be cheap, although it physically probably won't cost us any money because we'll use the bond fund remaining proceeds to pay for whatever studies we got to do. But that's kind of where we're at. The bigger picture is, do we really want to do it? You know, I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air. I was quite surprised by how many negative comments there were. But nevertheless, you know, we're here to represent our constituents, so we'll see where it goes.
When you say negative comments.
Meaning that those people are in favor of the ballards remaining.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want any type of bike or any kind of handicap thing. Generally, I'm giving generalizations, but I was very surprised. I thought the majority of the community, at least people I've talked to, really liked having the availability of the golf carts there. If we can't put golf carts for whatever reason down the future, then we got to figure out what we're going to do alternative to provide some place for those people to get to the boardwalk in a vehicle. And then, you know, I'm getting ahead of the process. ADA specifically allows electric golf carts. Specifically allows that, regardless of the intent of the cart. In the ADA rule. So this can end up anywhere.
Any questions of Bob?
Gonna have a lot more study before we're ready to do it.
So Bob, this is Doug. So the majority of the negative comments about not wanting golf or liking the ballards were from residents that wanted the ballards in there. Is that what that means? That submitted that?
That's my take on a quick summary of the comments that have been received by South Florida, as well as Terry Lilio.
And directly to us as well.
And we can all, you know, speak to our own.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that very many comments one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I should.
The board, you know, we invited comments when we
Yeah.
put the announcement out, and we got a lot of comments.
And to be honest with you, that kind of surprised me, but you know, whatever.
Yep.
There are voters, there are constituents.
Yeah, we got them on both sides, but I would say that the predominant was for people who don't want golf carts on the boardwalk. But I think it isn't a zero-sum game, if you will. There are ways we could perhaps address some of the problems, and at the same time, you know, it isn't either you have them or you don't have them.
Absolutely.
There are other things we could possibly do.
Absolutely.
So.
It'll be a give and take.
Mhm. Okay. Any questions or about that? Okay. If not, we'll move on to the Casella Pavers. As you recall, we've discussed this a couple of times. The Casella people would like to have pavers at the entrance of their community. They were not in the plans. Somehow they got left out of the plans, and we have not been able to find any other reference to them. So it appears that if they want pavers for their community, they're going to have to be paid for by somebody. We have received from Tetra Tech, I guess, one bid to do the work, and it's just slightly shy of $16,000. So at least that gives us a ballpark figure for what it would cost to provide the pavers for Casella. I think in our last meeting, one of the things we discussed was, would we do it? And obviously the cost would be a factor in this. I'm of the opinion that maybe we should split the cost. We would pick up half of it, and the other half would be picked up by the Fort Casella neighborhood. But
How many homes are in your community?
196. All right. So we're
So
not
that means that their community contributes
35,
ad valorem, yeah,
$30,
$35,000.
35 or 30, $40 a person or a unit. That would be one possible way of doing it, but certainly open to others. I'm just throwing that out as a potential proposal on the table. This was a situation that was not created by either ourselves or by the
Hey, Phil, is there any other community that might come forward requesting the same thing? I seen the note from Joe Schofield about Viadana did not have pavers. Is there any potential that this is just one of a few?
Well, I think, my feeling is that Viadana and Palazzo are special cases because they are on Pelican Preserve Boulevard, and putting pavers there wouldn't seem to me to make a heck of a lot of sense. And I think that's the only place we're aware of, a place where there are no pavers.
There is a name change at the Palazzo Way at that circle.
Mhm.
So that's a different road. Now, I'm not sure if that circle is in Pelican Preserve Boulevard or partly in Palazzo Way. I'd like to help these folks in Casella, quite honestly, but
If you want to make a comment, I would ask that you come up to the CC. You want
One more question.
to? Sure.
Do we have the money available, the 16,000?
Well, if it were half, we probably have enough in our budget to cover it.
Would we have the whole amount?
Probably could cover it. We'd have to move something from someplace else to do it.
Okay.
I'm
ahead.
Cece Haas from Casella too. Just to respond to the thing about Palazzo, they have dual monuments on the grass aside the main road that goes in. So that's the reason, I believe in a design sense, I'm just surmising that they don't have the pavers. I just wanted to advise that. I drove the whole complex this morning and looked at every community. The only one where you don't see them is when there's dual entrances. Some communities have dual entrances and they have them in one entrance. But other than that, everybody's got them.
Is most of the people in your community in favor of the pavers?
We have an 85% signed petition.
Okay.
Yes, we do, which was submitted to the board.
Yeah, we have that petition. Bill, did you have a comment? Further discussion? I think at this point, we don't have a final bid to do the work, probably. So, but we know the ballpark figure. And so I think we could have a motion that would say, once we get the bids,
That we can split the,
that we would split the best bid in half, if the people in Casella were willing to do that.
Not to exceed.
I can't answer.
And a not to exceed number.
I can't answer that.
I
at
understand
this
you
point.
can't answer for them, but that would be the offer we would put on the table.
Okay.
Brian Cohen from 10471 Casella.
Can I just finish my,
Sorry.
just one sec. The package that's been defined, is it the two side panel? Is it that blue drawing? Is it just straddling the monument?
Yes.
Okay, because that's the least, and that's the one we wanted, the one that is the least expensive. Okay, all right, thank you for your
As
consideration.
opposed to the whole circle.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't want it, no. No, just flanking the two sides, that's it.
Can you make a comment?
Yeah, Brian Cohen, 10471 Casella Way. And I know, speaking with the residents of Casella 1, that they were reluctant to sign if they thought they were going to have to pay anything. Their concern was every other, as we've mentioned here, every other community has had entrance pavers that they didn't have to pay for. Why do we have to pay for anything that should be part of the original Pelican Preserve design that may just have been erroneously missed, that we now have to become part of Pelican Preserve, or the look and feel of Pelican Preserve? So I know that may be a bit of a challenge within Casella 1 to pay for it, but we can, again, raise it to them and see what happens. But that's just, from my opinion. I know Casella 1 would be reluctant to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add one more thing? The other thing I would consider, or ask the board to consider, I was talking to Carol Brokey yesterday about this issue, and although she couldn't say, I know that I attend these meetings. There have been times when I have heard discussions about this board of paying for things that Lennar didn't do, some of the ponds work, things like that. And so this is something Lennar didn't do. And when we think about the ad valorem that we do put in as a community, we're just hoping to be made whole by the community that we serve in so many ways. That's just.
I have one comment, if I may, Chairman.
Sure, yeah. No,
On the Safety and Security Committees, it is looking into a crosswalk on that road because there is no north-south crosswalk connecting the Carina neighborhood to the Prado. We have east-west crosswalks, but the Safety Security Committee was working on looking at a crosswalk across that particular intersection there to go north-south. So I don't know how that might play into the pavers. Maybe both jobs could be done at one time.
Dee, do you have any comments on the?
Certainly, when we get there, we could incorporate pavers within a crosswalk similar to what exists at a few other locations. But I'll be honest, I think it'll be some time before we get to that point. We have to also consider some signage and pavement markings and possible geometric changes at that circle as well. So I think it's going to take us a while to get there, but it certainly could be part of a project.
Further comments?
Yeah, if I'm just to answer Brian's questions. We have exhausted all of the drawings, the plans, the concept drawings that were given to us. Research was done at the city of Fort Myers. And although I agree, my interpretation is it was an omission, but we're dealing with an R, so it may not have been an unplanned omission, but we cannot force that. Our attorney's already told us, GSCDD attorney has said, unless we have something that says they have to do it, we can't force it. So yeah, we've tried everything we can to get them to do it. That's all. Just throwing it out. And I think if we did our math, it's going to be like $40 a home. The cost of a dinner out, but whatever.
And this is Doug. That comment that was made from Carol Brokey, that fund, there is a little bit of money in that fund, but it was WCI shortcomings, and it was only in the old Pelican that money could be used for. And this would be more new Pelican, and that fund could not be used for new Pelicans.
So none of the pond work was in the new Pelican that, okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Further discussion? What do people think?
Well, I think we should go ahead and do the whole, I think we should just go ahead and do it.
I agree. I think it's a reasonable request.
Others? Joe?
I would support that.
I have no problem with that.
And
Okay.
I'm comfortable putting a dollar figure on it because we don't have a request for proposals or whatever.
Well, we already have a proposal though. It's just shy of 16,000. So
What number would you suggest?
18,000.
Okay. I will move that we go go forward with pavers for the Casella area in an amount not to exceed $18,000.
I would second that.
Further discussion? If not, all in
Nope.
favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, it's Doug. Aye.
Thank you, Doug. Passes 6-0.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, if we go over 18,000, can you put in a dinner for each person?
I think you already got one for 16.
Okay.
And let us use your pool occasionally.
The next item on the agenda, which is resolution 2018-4, is the golf cart resolution. And we have some cleaning up to do on that resolution. We put out two things, or we put out one thing and we have another one. Remember that we changed the requirements as far as colors are concerned on the golf carts. And we said that any colors are acceptable, but we did, in doing that, said that you can't, in effect, can't trick out we don't want to have some of the things that you see in the villages and things of that sort. So part of
I
this,
was just ready to put those flames on ours.
uh,
No flames?
I think what we could say, and it might cover the problem, is that people cannot put non-dealer accessories on their carts. They can paint them any color, but not put non-dealer accessories on them.
You know, I agree totally with this intent. I'm not sure, dealers may offer some crazy things. I think we should somehow, we talked about this before, calling it a stock offering, not an accessory. Just golf carts should be stock golf carts. And I don't know how you define that.
Mm-hmm. Any ideas?
We can talk to some of the manufacturers, see what they would consider a stock golf cart.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they could give us some verbiage.
Yeah, okay.
Phil?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Chris Santos with Castle Management. The current resolution does include two sections that references mandatory equipment and optional equipment. That optional equipment reads that it may include high-speed motor, fuel gauge, horn, pinstriping, and name decal, mirrors, fans, golf hubcaps, club protector, side enclosure panels, seat covers, or 4-passenger seating. And then later on, Section 8 references customized golf carts are prohibited. If the equipment that we were to check during the registration process only encompasses those items that are included in the required and the optional section, do we feel that that does not satisfactorily cover the potential issues we might address?
Thoughts on that? You want to read that again, Chris?
Certainly. Optional equipment may include high-speed motor, fuel gauge, horn, pinstriping, and name decals, which in my experience is what we see often. Mirrors, fans, golf hubcaps, club protectors, side enclosure panels, seat covers, or 4-passenger seating. And then later we have Section 8 references customized golf carts are prohibited.
That's based on your inspection. Is that correct?
Well, that's what the resolution reads as.
But aren't we also faced with people aren't getting their carts inspected?
Well, that's another problem.
That's the other problem we
That's
have,
a
and we have no
difference.
way to police that at this point. Or do we?
The resolution also references that it is within the power of the community association to enforce violations of the cart rules through the policies that the association has to enforce any violations. I think the challenge in doing that, we have a procedure if we are able to identify the cart owner. The challenge may be that if we see somebody riding a cart down the street, We do not currently have any intention to pull those individuals over. And if we see a cart parked at the town center, for example, it is not always an easy task to identify the owner of that cart without perhaps doing a stakeout.
Do a town center ticket.
The,
I mean, seriously, you can make up some form of a ticket and put it on their card.
At the moment, the procedure that's followed by our staff is we'll do a tour of the town center and we leave a double-sided registration reminder that includes
Okay, so you do
both
that.
the rules and the actual form they would fill out to register their cart.
I would suggest that at this point, we're not talking about enforcement, that's not part of this resolution. So we ought to treat that as a separate problem. But at this point, we're looking at the resolution, just what we're going to allow.
So I'm sorry, Chris, are you saying that in your opinion, because you deal with these resolutions all the time, the wording in there is sufficient or it is not sufficient?
In our experience, I believe that it is sufficient. If we're talking about the optional items, I think that it is stating here what is permitted. And if it is not included in here, we can safely say that it is not permitted. That's
Okay.
my take. I don't know if the CDD's interpretation of their document differs from that.
Does it say limited to, by any chance?
Optional equipment may include.
How about if we changed it to limited to and list the options they can have? That's much more specific, I think.
I could see that being
Terminology,
helpful.
maybe, any comments?
Well, I think that this is going to need to be reviewed from time to time because we're starting to see manufacturers come up with different designs. You know, currently like 4 seats under one roof instead of what we've seen in the past where there's a back seat essentially looking back toward the traffic. My personal opinion is I don't much care what color they look like or so forth. I'm more concerned that if they run me over, they have insurance. So the registration, as John was saying, I think is a bigger issue, my opinion.
Yeah, and that's in the resolution. The insurance requirement is certainly part of the resolution. And indeed, it was really the primary reason we do the inspections is to make sure that people have adequate insurance.
Correct.
So if we change, does somebody want to make a motion on this? My suggestion would be that we not have a motion at this point, that we try and come up with some wording and come back to us. I'll work with Scott, and then limited to Joe might be something that we could use. Because the other issue I wanted to bring up was, and we had already approved this, we need to, one of the things we need to do is, we said that people could have golf carts that could only be driven in the daytime, but if they plan to drive their carts at night, they should say that headlights, brake lights, and turn signals are required for the operation of golf carts at night. And I think we had agreed that because we had we were semi-grandfathering in people with regard to being allowed to drive their golf carts without that extra equipment on it, that we should leave that opportunity there for people who want it because they were promised that. But at the same time, if people want to drive at night, they've got to have this extra equipment. And I think we had agreed to that.
We still have a number of chartered golf carts that were given to buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They should have all the access in daytime.
Okay.
But a lot of those people have converted to put lights on them already too.
Well, that would be good.
They have. I mean, because I know of a couple that have.
Yeah, it'd be smart for them to have done, but if they didn't,
Okay.
they're limited to just using them in daytime.
Yeah.
I think our rules cover that.
I think they do. If we add this comment that you have to have headlights, brake lights, and turn signals if you want to operate them at night.
Yeah.
Okay, my suggestion would be that we come back to you the next time with a revised copy of 218-04 with the two changes made and get final approval to send that to the CDD. Any further discussion on that? Okay. Association manager report, Scott is not here. Chris, do you have anything that he gave you to report on?
I apologize. I don't think that I have much to share with you today.
Okay.
I did distribute a copy of the traffic counts provided by Wiser Security for March through both lanes, the resident and guest lane. We had over 84,000 entries in March of 2022. Over 14,000 of those entries did come through the guest lane. So those individuals were registered and checked in through the staffing up at the front. I'm certainly available if anyone has any comments, questions concerning the Wiser activities or anything that Castle's involved in.
Any questions from the committee? Okay. If not, we will move on to a discussion of rumble strips. And Randy, I'm going to ask you to kind of pick this up.
Sure. I'm not sure if it got put on the computer, but I had jotted down a few different items.
Dean, do you want to make some comments perhaps to start? Maybe we'll do it that way.
Okay, sure. Thank you. And thank you, Randy, for also contributing to this report. You know, over the past month, we continue to work on several initiatives. The primary one is the one that's probably the biggest thorn that we're dealing with is the rumble strips at on Veneto at Vicenza Drive on the way to and from the town center. We installed rumble strips early last year, and immediately experienced some difficulties with people in automobiles, pickup trucks, and golf carts who were veering across the double yellow center line to avoid the strips and into opposing traffic, potentially creating head-on collisions. We instituted the traffic cones on the lines, on the double yellow lines, in an effort to try to keep people in their lane, and that was somewhat effective. Not totally effective, but was effective in keeping most people in their line. Motorists, we've observed speed limits have been decreased. Not speed limits, speeds have been decreased in the area since the rumble strips and the cones have been in place. During the summer last year, the city was contacted by one of the residents, at least one of the residents, and came out and reviewed the situation and concluded that you know, there was a potential for safety concerns, but the permit had not been totally executed and the project was not quite complete. The rumble strips did not quite extend as far as they were intended to, so Scott had arranged with his vendor to come out and add to the length of the rumble strips on both sides, on the yellow line side as well as towards the gutter. I think probably 2 months ago, we talked about rumble strips being extended towards the gutter, and that was causing golf carts to try to avoid that side of the rumble strip and drive up on the grass strip adjacent to the gutters, creating some damage to that area. And we've talked about the possible effects of the rumble strips on the golf carts. Again, the intention was to slow vehicles down. Vehicles include golf carts, but nevertheless, it was suggested that we will try to pull back the end of the rumble strips to create a 4-foot wide clear area where the golf carts would be able to drive on the right-hand side of the street and avoid driving over the rumble strips. So keeping the rumble strips in place, shortening them a bit, I think 2.5 feet is what's needed. And that would allow golf carts and bicycles as well to continue unimpeded. We got a quote from the vendor a week or two ago for $1,600 to remove the 2.5 feet of the rumble strips on the gutter side of things. And we're waiting to decide whether that will be done now, or should we consider adding that removal to the next project, being the addition of rumble strips on the opposite side of the street from the existing rumble strips. What that would do would be to basically have, we could eliminate the orange cones, and motorists wouldn't have the ability to avoid the rumble strips going in or out of town center. So that's kind of where we are right now. We have a proposal from Florida Transportation Engineering to design the additional rumble strips and get the permits for them. That was submitted excuse me, submitted yesterday, I believe, distributed yesterday to the PPAC board and the district. It had 4 tasks in the proposal. 2 of them related to the rumble strips. Then they had a fee associated with them of about, when you add it together, about 90 almost $10,000, a little under $10,000 for design, permitting, and post-design services where they inspect the installations. There were 2 other.
Did that include the construction as well?
No.
Or
No.
Okay, so that's just consulting.
This is design services and permitting. There's no construction at this point. The other 2 items were supplemental optional tasks of traffic counting and low-cost traffic calming alternatives. To be able to address some of the questions and concerns that come up. Well, what if we did this and what if we did that? Would have a document prepared by the professional traffic engineers to give us some input on other ideas, speed humps, all-way stops, chicanes, the other traffic calming ideas that could be considered for this area. I've asked them to identify those as optional tasks, and they are about $4,500 in this fee proposal. So total cost is about $14,500 for professional services, and with the approval of the board, I think the next step would be to go to CDD for issuance of a purchase order, and then we would be able to move the ball forward and have the rumble strips designed for the other side of the street and permitted.
So it's could the 2.5 feet be removed from the end of the existing strips without any other further permitting or any other thing else?
I would say yes. I would say that that's all still part of the initial project, and we're just refining it. And I would say we would be able to go ahead and just remove those without permit.
All right,
So we would have,
I like to recommend that we do that, because at this point, if we get a golf cart damaged as a result of the rumble strips and then get sued for that, I mean, for the $1,600, let's take that small amount, do that before we start working.
Would there be damage if they slowed down?
I'm sorry.
say that again, please.
This is Doug. The only thing is, first of all, Dean, you're a saint to work through all this. But the thing is, I worry about people in Pelican Preserve. If there's a law, they find a way around it. They'll be driving their cars in that 4-foot space and the other tire in the grass. I just know that's our residents.
Doug, if I can respond to that, it seems like much of the efforts that have been made to modify behavior have not been successful.
Yes.
That's to your point. This morning I drove to the town center. I watched a guy on a bicycle come by and literally with his right foot kick over the cones. And this is not something that people are ambivalent about. They have strong feelings about them, in my opinion. So I'm also concerned about doubling down and putting rumble strips on the other pavement, because the idea was to have calming effect before vehicles got to the Vincenza intersection, I believe. And this
Correct.
going both ways.
Correct.
And so in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, if we leave a space that's unimpeded in both directions, for bicycles, for golf carts, and don't further, don't add any additional strips, I think we end up then with most parties being equally dissatisfied.
Didn't we come up with a discussion to basically say, let's remove the rumble strips, but we're told we cannot do that?
Well, among our group, we did have discussions about that. However, when we had the safety meeting, I presented information, some that Joe had provided to me as far as schematics for golf cart suspensions. I also spoke with a woman who's with Jerry Labino from Hole in One Golf that had a presentation of the golf carts at our town center promenade. One of their salesmen was telling our residents that these rumble strips could cause damage.
And the idea.
And so there is that perception out there, because basically they have a rubber grommet instead of a normal suspension like an automobile. So, and I had to check on this because I've never owned a golf cart, so I don't know much about them personally. But
we were addressing really two problems here, although one of them was more prominent. One of them was the problem that the Vicenza people getting out onto Veneto safely. That was part of it. And part of it was just to generally slow the traffic down on that road. And it seems to me that what we ran into, which we did not, the unintended consequence was people crossing the line to avoid the rumble strips. So it seems to me that if we installed the extra rumble strips, cut the length of them at the curbside so that there's a 4-foot space, we would then have possibly, John, as you've indicated, we would have people who would be trying to drive their cars and avoid the rumble strips. I think that's less likely, but we had also discussed at one point putting some curbing there that would prevent people from doing that. So my suggestion would be that we go ahead with the plan to put in the extra rumble strips And if we start to see the cars going up there, we come up with another solution.
Randy, can you hear me now? When I read Randy's report, I saw something in there where there was a study of putting posts up alongside of the road to prevent cars from driving over into the grass. I'm not a proponent of the post, quite frankly, because I see bicyclists maybe falling and hitting their head on one, but I think a curb, a real curb, would stop a car from going up onto the grass. Nobody wants to drive their car up the curb. We have those gutters there right now. I don't have any idea what it was.
Oh, Dean, do you remember having discussions about some other barrier?
Was that a question to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I know I had considered I had thought about a few different things. The flexible stanchion is something that we oftentimes see out on the public roadways, out on 41, out on Colonial, is flexible. It gets adhered to the edge of the pavement, and if it gets hit by a vehicle, it falls over and then springs back up into play. That would be. I don't think I'd like the looks of that in Pelican Preserve myself. I know a lot of people don't like the looks of the cones, but I think that those stanchions on the way to our town center are really not attractive. A curb, a 6-inch high concrete curb could be very effective in keeping people from driving onto the grass strip, and I would opt for something along those lines much quicker than I would for a flexible barrier.
Dean, this is Doug. When they put the cart path, around the conservation there where the boardwalk was put, they put those strips in there, and they ended up having to put shrubs so people could not drive around in the grass around the strip. Now, I don't know, Chris, if that was the Castle that did that, or I don't know who did that. But they planted shrubberies so the carts could not drive around those strips.
We have, Christopher, we have offered to do that from the landscaping work group, to put planting there to prevent cars from driving off of the road. We thought maybe there's some plants that would be adaptable for that, and probably getting rough use also, but I would more in detail. The other thing is, we did have a person from that community that came to our meeting 2 months ago and said she had no problem getting down to that. She took care, and the biggest issue were the shrubs that are in that side yard. I went over and took a look at that, and the shrubs really impact the ability of anybody coming out of that community from seeing a car or a golf cart till it's almost on the intersection. I also checked to see what the property line was, and it looks like that the property where the shrubs are is owned by that homeowner. I'm not sure if there might be some easements there, or if that community might want to, as a homeowners association, talk to that homeowner and see if they would allow someone to come and trim those shrubs down substantially so you have a better line of sight. That would eliminate the issue of a car coming and going out of that intersection. It doesn't abate the problem of speeders, but it would handle one big problem for us.
That was part of the initial solution before the rumble strips were even identified. Joe, was that you that was speaking just then?
That was Joe.
Yeah, thank you. That was part of the initial action that was done. Gosh, it must be over 2 years ago now. The shrubbery along that back of sidewalk area, if you will, was trimmed down to improve sight distance, so that someone coming out of the Vicenza Drive could see to the left approaching vehicles. You know, the horizontal curve on the roadway is a contributing factor also, but if you keep the shrubs trimmed down and the motorists are not speeding, I mean, even if they're going 20 miles an hour, with the shrubs trimmed down, it's a much safer situation than with the shrubs being allowed to grow too tall. So keeping it trimmed is important.
Yeah, it has to be trimmed. This is just a Joe Schofield comment, but if we put the rumble strips back where that turn is, cars would have to slow down in that area. Chances are they might not pick up speed as they get to the intersection, but they're still coming around that intersection way too fast, and that inhibits anybody from really having good reaction time trying to come out of that intersection there. I think rumble strips 20 feet back might be more safe.
Effective.
Except they know the rumble strips are coming, right? They have signs to say the rumble strips are coming.
Yeah, but they're still coming till they.
You know, our study indicated that it does slow the traffic down a little bit.
Yeah, I think I saw, I think it said it slowed cars down about 2 to 4 miles an hour.
Right. If that's.
But I don't know what it's slowing them down from.
Yeah, we do have some measurements before the rumble strips went in. I haven't seen the data recently, but we do have after installation average speeds of the vehicles has been in the range of 15 to 20 miles per hour on average. There's some that are driving faster, but that is lower. I just don't recall how much lower than what it was. We do have the data, though. We can get that for you.
Yeah, it was 2 miles an hour.
Okay, well, at this point, we seem to be going around in circles. I would suggest that maybe we ask the safety and security work group to come up with a proposal that they think will work, and what we should be doing here, and let's see whether we go forward with it.
I would add just 2 things if I could. During the initial safety meeting, I took a number of pictures around, and to the if you're looking toward the town center across, there are about 4 bushes that are kind of, I don't know, 8 or 10 feet tall. If 1 or 2 of those were removed, you would have an unimpeded view of going all that full length of the street down toward the town center. That would be something to be considered, and it's easy to visualize it. All you have to do is stand on the corner. The other thing I would ask people to consider is that this was done initially for a group that had concerns about safety getting in and out of the community. Having said that, this is a community of 24 homes, less than 1% of the entire number of homes in the community. So my question is it really a safety issue, or how big a safety issue is it? It's not like a community that's got, you know, close to 200 homes with vehicles traveling through them all the time. And as I said, I'm not unsympathetic. I'm just kind of questioning how much to invest in this or reinvest.
That's a great comment.
Joe, you have a comment?
I certainly agree with trimming those trees down. I don't know how we do that. Ask the homeowner or ask the community association to work with the homeowner to do it, but they certainly are an impediment. I went over there and took pictures with my golf cart and said, that's not realistic. So I went back with my car and took pictures like I was going to be coming out of the intersection. And I agreed with the lady that was here several months ago and said, if you take your time, there's no problem. But the cars are speeding around there until they get to the rumble strips. And that's when they slow down. As a driver, I wouldn't dare pull out until I knew that car had slowed down and had proceeded through at that point. But they're not going to stop for anyone coming out. So
now the mirror that was put in is very effective, in my opinion. really helps with the visibility.
Mhm.
But Christopher, you can talk to the feelings of that resident who lives right on the corner when
Yeah.
those initial shrubs were trimmed.
Yeah, a couple of years back, a petition was received by the Safety Security Work Group from the owners in the Vicenza neighborhood. We actually held a meeting over at Destinations where I would say most, if not all, of the owners from Vicenza came and very passionately expressed their opinions and safety concerns. After that meeting, a number of items were done: the installation of the mirror across the street, the trimming down of the shrubs on the left hand, the east side of the road. There was the removal of several, or relocation of several Lennar sales signs that were there at the time. So I think at this moment, there really isn't much of a concern of traffic coming from the town center east towards the boulevard. This is entirely dealing with the traffic coming from the boulevard around that curve towards, people going to the town center. I know that just over the last month or two, there was certainly a surge of interest from the owners of Vicenza when they had heard about the possibility of removing the rumble strips entirely. And I would only say that I would expect to hear from them again quite passionately if a decision like that was, to be pursued. I think right now, again, we can stay on top of the trimming of the landscaping that might inhibit any sort of view to make sure to address that. I think the trees that Randy was talking about, not on the owner's property, but closer to the town center, that's a couple ligustrum, if I recall. Again, I don't think that that's as much of an issue right now. Back to another one of Randy's comments, when we had initially trimmed the plantings on the side of, I believe it's 9917 Vicenza Drive, Don and Nancy Rice, they were displeased with the significance that it had been trimmed, because it also provides them a buffer from the individuals who are walking along the sidewalk there that now might be looking right into their windows or their lanai. I think there's a happy medium there that we can keep it trimmed to address those concerns. But I think even in doing all those items, just the feedback I've received from Vicenza owners is that they do want there to be some sort of traffic calming device there, like the rumble strips. And I think that modifying them to allay some of the concerns with bicyclists and golf cart drivers is going to be the compromise that is going to leave the most people as satisfied as they might be.
One of the times we discussed the possibility of a stop sign, and I think there was an issue with the city regarding a stop sign. Is that correct?
I believe Dean.
I have asked this traffic consultant to include, if we ask them to evaluate other traffic calming measures, to include the possibility or feasibility of a all-way, three-way stop sign at that intersection. But because I want to get a decision, would the city allow it or not? I'm not convinced that it would not be allowed, but I'm also not convinced that people would stop at a stop sign when they are leaving Pelican, the town center, after a concert or after another event in the town center area, approaching a stop sign on Veneto. I'm not convinced that people are going to stop there. I've seen enough people in Pelican Preserve disregard regulatory signs throughout the whole community. So I don't know that it would be a benefit.
It could cause a terrible traffic jam.
Dean, they do make stop signs that are actually hinged. They can be opened up and closed. So for special events, you could just close them.
I went to the concert last night and it was 1,200 people in attendance. And at the end, it moved pretty reasonable getting out of there as it existing. But it does take patience.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I was just saying, if we were to introduce a stop sign, so maybe it's a temporary sign and you don't have to use it all the time. To me, that confuses the situation. Is today the day that they don't use it? Is today the day that the gate doesn't stay up all day? You know, I think we need something that is consistent. But a stop sign is regulatory, would have to be approved, could be enforced. But I just don't know that our residents and visitors and guests would abide by the stop sign. But we could get it, have an evaluation done. That's one of the options that is in this proposal from Florida Transportation Engineers.
Now, I'll throw my 2 cents in. I like the option of cutting the rumble strips back a bit and putting a curb there, which a car is not going to want to drive over.
I
You
would,
know, another thing that we might consider is when you're on Pelican Preserve and you're attempting to take a left turn to go toward the town center, I wonder if there isn't a tendency for people to try to quickly get through that. There's so much traffic come from every direction, from the club, from the town center, you know, from the entrance to Pelican. I think maybe if there's an issue with speed in that first segment before you get to the rumble strips, it's because people have tried to make sure they got through the big intersection
I
more
am,
quickly.
I am going to cut off the debate at this point. We are going around in circles. We're not getting any place. And ask that the Safety and Security Work Group come back with a well-reasoned solution to this problem, or something that they think we should try that makes sense. We could spend all afternoon on this. And, I think we've had enough. So Dean and Randy, ask you guys to reconsider and come back with a case that makes the most sense. There are obviously a number of ways we could go, but let's reconsider. Do you want to make a further, the next thing on the agenda is the Safety and Security Work Group report. I'm not sure I remember. Dean, are you going to handle that, or is Randy?
I can
Okay.
address that, and Dean can jump in whenever to clarify.
Sounds good. Thanks, Randy.
Yeah, the some of the under Dean's direction, as he's mentioned, he has engaged this Florida Transportation Engineering to be an alternative to Tetra Tech for some of these different projects. So a couple of those that are besides the rumble strips, and another one that's a pretty large importance is possible adjustments to Prado, Cypress, and Prado, Astoria traffic circle. There have been some issues there. I think a collision with a stoplight, and another email with a resident said they had that kind of a close call. So perhaps a Florida engineering, transportation engineering could offer suggestions for signage and or lines on the road that more diligently provide direction as to how to go into that. I don't know that it's a true roundabout. It seems more like a traffic circle with an island median, not too dissimilar from a cul-de-sac. So, so it's understandable, and I think that the people can be a little confused on how to proceed in and out of that. Speed monitoring continues. A couple of things that have been struck me when I got some from traffic things from Jennifer. First of all, we had I looked at some of the traffic over at different times of the day, and low light conditions as an example, and in regards to illumination, and talked with Bob about this a little bit, but we have somewhere between 12 and 16% of our traffic that travels that we have captured between 8 p.m. and 6 p.m. in the morning. So when sometimes in some 3-month periods, there was less than one a day. So once again, I like to look at some of this type of data to determine, is there a true safety issue? It's all clear to anybody who came back from the concert last night that Cypress Grove at night it's dark, and it very possibly justifies additional lighting there. But once again, how big a safety issue is it? I think that needs to be. We need to use data like this to help inform our decisions because we're asked to make value judgments all the time. What else? There have been some, a number of different times when we've gotten comments or criticisms of Wiser and Security Group. I would say that in February, we had 75,000 vehicles pass through the front gate. So occasionally, if we find that a security officer has fallen asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think that sometimes these things happen. And occasionally, there can be issues with dwelling live. My wife, as an example, necessarily has to call in, and where I use the app. It's treated differently when it comes into the gatehouse, and sometimes by using an app, it goes directly into the computer. By using the phone, it goes to a message bank that sometimes the security guard has to then enter into the data. So we have to be, I think, cognizant of the volume of traffic they get, the workload that they have, and the efforts that are being made. So had a Zoom call between Christopher, Dean, Scott, and myself, and Mark Thompson yesterday, or a couple of days ago, regarding some different items, and likely we'll continue to have Zoom calls. We get incident reports sent to Dean, who then forwarded them to us. They're also now including some medical issues. Example, a day or two ago, a woman resident ran into one of the parked vehicles, work vehicles. It's called a Gator, and ended up with a lost tooth and a trip to the hospital. So it gets reported to us, but our security people are going to do what they can in terms of, most of the time, that's call an ambulance or a 911. And if there's an issue with unruly people at the Casella pool, our security officers will respond. It just took 20 minutes. By the time the person got there, all the people were gone. But we got a rather poor review of Wiser as a result of what's happening. And once again, we sometimes have too great an expectations of what Wiser is supposed to do. They are not our personal police force. They have neither the authority or responsibility to intervene in private property. So those are some of the kinds of issues that we get that we talk to and have to respond back to the residents about. Dean, anything else you want to add to that? I'm trying to hit the highlights here.
No, I think you got them all, Randy. I'm sure there's a couple of things that as soon as we sign off, I will think about, but I think you got the highlights. Thank you.
Any questions of Randy or Dean regarding the safety and security work group?
I do have a question of the board, though, in terms of how to proceed with Florida Transportation Engineering. If we're going to derive any benefit from them, they need to have a contract or a purchase order. And while they've given us a proposal, and we may not want to implement all aspects of it, they do have a proposal. They have several tasks, and they have some budget numbers that we could work with. But I can't go back to them and ask them, what about this intersection, or what about this type of traffic calming, without having a way for them to be compensated for their services. So my question is the next step, does the PPAC need to take an action that then directs CDD to issue a PO, or how do things move forward?
Yeah, I think, Dean, that the Safety and Security Work Group has to make a concrete proposal that we engage Florida Traffic Engineering to do certain things at a certain amount. And that would then, if it's passed by the TPAC, since we have sufficient funds in our budget to cover that, I don't know that we have to actually go to the board with that. We would not have to.
It's a budget item.
It's a budget. It is part of, it can be part of the budget for the Safety and Security Work Group.
Did we not already give them the authority to contract that engineering firm when we made the change from Tetra Tech?
Yeah.
You gave us the authority to try one assignment, and
Okay.
that assignment was going to be the rumble strips. So that's what this proposal is that's in front of you now, is to deal with the one assignment.
Okay,
But-
we need to give you approval to move forward.
That's correct.
Got it.
As I said, we would not have to go back. We would not have to go to the board with that particular proposal. But I think at this point, we are enough up in the air. Or do you have a proposal, Dean, that we can approve? Or are we up in the air so much that we need to settle that before we actually have a proposal? I recognize we've strung Florida Traffic Engineering along for a long time here.
Yeah, I think that this proposal, with the optional tasks, we could hold on the rumble strip side of things and engage them for the optional tasks, and that would give them the ability to start doing something that has some flexibility in the verbiage, the way it's written into this proposal.
So how much, which of this, there were 4 things in your proposal.
Yeah, that is $4,500.
So somebody want to make a motion? And I guess, Dean, you ought to tell us exactly what the 4,500, what it says.
Sure. Yeah. So the $4,500 is to do traffic count data. So we need traffic count data if we're going to evaluate stop signs, warrants, etc. So we would do 8-hour turning movement counts on a weekday of bicycles and pedestrians, passenger vehicles, motorcycles, medium heavy trucks, and golf carts. And at this point, the assumption would be that it was at Veneto and Vicenza. I could easily see that being transferred to the circle at Prado and Cypress Grove Drive and Casella. Do that function at a different location, and to evaluate low-cost traffic calming alternatives, where we evaluate up to 2 low-cost alternatives to control speeding. We said at Veneto and Vicenza, but we could do it some other location.
So we need a motion for that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we fund $4,500 for traffic study, including counting data and collecting for the Safety and Security Committee. And I think they can apply it on specific needs.
Do we have a second? No second?
I'll second it.
You're seconded. Okay. Further discussion? No further comments or discussion? Go ahead, John.
I'm still not, I don't understand your request if it's not specific for one or the other? And I mean, one of the circles, what's the purpose of the circle?
Well, as Randy had just spoken about, the current design of the circle at Prado and Cypress Grove and Casella. Prado and Cypress Grove are 4-lane arterial roadways that intersect at that location, and traffic movements are effectively directed around the center island, the circle. It's not a roundabout. It is an island in the middle of the intersection. And it's not configured such that people know which lane they're supposed to be in to go around the circle, to go partway around and into Casella, or what. So that's what's happening is drivers are confused how they should drive this area. And the study that I would want to have conducted there is to count the traffic volumes, vehicles that are turning left, right, going around into Casella, et cetera. Determining what kind of modifications might make sense at this location. And in my opinion, that could be signage, that could be pavement markings, that might be narrowing the approaches on Cypress Grove and on Prado Drive from 2 lanes to 1 lane, so that traffic as it enters the circle is entering it in 1 lane, and then making the turns as appropriate. But we don't know if those are feasible options to address safety concerns. We had a motorist hit a light pole last month, and in that circle, we've had near misses, as were reported earlier this week. We've had requests for pedestrian crosswalks on Cypress Grove from Prado, all of which are great requests and all are important things, but no one has looked at this in a study to say what ought to be done. And that's kind of what I'm suggesting now. If we want to step away from the rumble strips and take a look at another location that really needs some help, this is
I'd like to help
the way
you.
to get started.
The motion before the board should be to authorize them to spend up to $5,000 as they see fit for these studies. End the discussion.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Better motion.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
okay. We had a motion on the floor, but it died for lack of a second, but we have a new motion to authorize the Safety and Security Work Group to expend up to $5,000 with Florida Traffic Engineering to study traffic spots that they deem appropriate. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All righty, that passes 6-0. And now we've got to the easy spot.
Thank you, folks.
We put this item, this landscape operations discussion, I put this on the agenda because we have some real issues here as to how we are going to handle landscaping. We've had proposal from Joe and the landscape work group, but we've also had some comments about this from the PPCA, the Pelican Preserve Community Association. So I think what I'd like to do here is to begin with the comments that Rich Rittenberg submitted to the committee as a starter for the discussion. So Rich, do you want to?
Oh, thank you, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody. Rich Rittenberg. I'm here on behalf of the association. Many of you have what I thought were the outlines, meeting Phil's deadline of Monday, day and a half in advance. Did you all have them? If so, I won't go through them slowly, but I will go through them. Association understands that PPAC is evaluating a change in the role of the landscaping work group from an advisory role to an operational management role. And we have a lot of concerns about such a change. We believe landscaping is a vital long-term importance factor for both the association and the CDD, PPAC as major part of the CDD, both day-to-day operations and long-term planning and improvement determine the appearance, ambience of the entire community, property values, community reputation, marketability are all at stake. Nothing is going to make Pelican Preserve look old more quickly than if we don't do landscaping correctly, both short-term and long-term. You drive in a place and it looks like not so nice, and you leave and drive to another place. I noted that Scott recently had provided a notional example of potential long-term landscaping and monument improvements. I would say there's absolute immediate need for the association and the CDD, whether it's through PPAC or Joe's group, to together have thorough discussions and reach agreement on a plan for landscaping and monument capital improvements. You drive down Treeline, you look at our monument, and you look at some of the other monuments. You don't need to look in history and figure out which ones are new and which ones are old. But to change the monuments is going to take some money. You got to plan. What should we spend more money on this year, next year, third year out? And we all have a vital interest to do that together. Landscaping operations themselves are complex. It's both cut the grass and trim the trees, but it's also replacing plants and what material do you use. Beyond that, it's integration with an irrigation system that has this very complex set of old controls used by landscape contractors, used by the golf course, used by neighborhoods. So the association strongly believes that any potential change to this current mode requires careful consideration and mutual planning. Sounds right. We're in this thing together forever. We got to work it all out together. We're prepared to so engage. Subsequent to preparing those remarks, really just last night or this morning, I got a copy of Joe's preparation, purpose of the PPAC LWG, and caused me to produce a few more comments. Just with reference, currently there is a contract between the district and the association. The association is charged with the responsibility to manage the operation and maintenance of the landscaping. In fact, the preamble of the contract says the association is uniquely positioned and qualified to do that. The district and the association agree that having the association operate and maintain this area is in the best interest in the district and the property owners. We perform that by means of our management contract with Castle, who manages the contractor. The proposed activities of the landscape working group must be in concert with and fully coordinated with the Castle group. The work group can provide advice and recommendations, but cannot provide direction to Castle or to the contractor. The way this is written is contrary to that. Yes, there could be amendments to the agreement between the association and the district, but right now, the agreement is the agreement and we're working under it, and it cannot be changed by creating a work group and assigning tasks to them. And I would say, most importantly and most disturbing, here we are talking about changing something that is ongoing and working. Surely could always work better. And we're still doing nothing about mutual long-term planning. Why are we putting our all energy into figuring out how to change what's working now and zero to plan for the future? Smart? No. I mean, what is the priority? Start planning for the future. We already got the present under control. If we can do both, wonderful. So I appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, okay. I think, Joe, we need your comments, or maybe Bob's, I don't know who.
And I guess my comments will be primarily directed to Rich's contributions, because to go back, I mean, this group has authorized the landscape work group over about the last 4 months. So we've been doing it publicly, and everybody's fully aware of it. Scott's been in a number of meetings, so he's totally in a participatory management. This just didn't drop out of the sky. The reason for looking at it and making the change to the system that's working was primarily driven for me personally when I realized that PPAC was paying $93,000 a year for contract services to Castle. And they're primarily, I'm just, big picture item, it's primarily directed for landscaping and security. We have history in PPAC, because I've been a founding member of that, whereas a particular task at the time, it happened to be pods, it could have just as easily been landscaping, was managed by a work group of PPAC. And therefore, Castle has nothing to do with it, and that's great, because we're getting it done for nothing. So we have a template, if you will, for how to manage this with volunteers. I totally agree with the comment that the current contract exists, and certainly that would be changed if PPAC approves it. I mean, that's what the proposal's got to be today. Because you brought up the operational and management role of the supervisors, which is Ameriscape, currently handled by Castle, part of the motion that's going to come before the board today will be to transfer that to a work group. Now, remember, the only thing that's changing are those entities, those properties, and those things that are owned and operated by the GFCDD. We are not talking about anything related to golf course or town center or any community association properties. We should all be working together, and Joe's work group has invited, not the golf course, I don't think yet, but Castle to be part of it, and certainly whoever the community association would like to put into that. And yes, it is a fact that we are getting older, 20 years old, now it's time to be looking at things. But the fact remains that in the last 15 years, it was never proposed to have a long-term plan. It was never proposed to make a plan revision. Once they started working on it in the work group level, then all of a sudden last week, without any last month, without any pre-notice, a plan was dumped on the PPAC committee, totally ignoring the work group. Work group's been obvious and open with Castle, but Castle just plopped that one out. That didn't sit well. You talk about mutual respect and communication. That's very, very important. But as we go forward, we absolutely all have a vested interest in it. I don't think that one group versus the other would do it any better or any worse. the resources available to the landscape work group far exceed what Castle has in terms of historical, educational background, practical knowledge, owning landscaping services, and taking advantage of Elle Harris, who's part of that group. And Elle does everything the landscape group does for all of Gateway, which is 2/3 bigger than us. So she's an integral part of this whole thing. So the management and the expertise is there. It just comes down to now, how do we spend our money? We can continue down the path we are on, and we will continue paying an outside person, or we can take advantage of volunteers that want to help, have expertise, and hopefully they can operate as effectively as ponds. And the only reason I've been so deeply involved in it is we're using the ponds template to work on them. And I got to tell you, in the future, we're going to do it for security. We want to do the very same thing for security down the road. You can't take too many things at one time. So right now we've just chosen on this one particular item. Joe went out and got certified by the state of Florida. He is now has a completion certificate for Florida Landscape Expert Certification, whatever the hell that means. But he made the effort to go and become more educated. We have done an analysis, a preliminary, and I'm working very closely with Scott. We're taking the existing budget line by line, and we're comparing it to if we busted this up and had landscape work group funding and a budget and everything presented by PPAC and safety and security funding and everything else in the future, but step by step, nothing rushing, nothing, head bent into the future. The opportunity we had when we just redid our landscape contract, it was just redid, April 1st, it went into effect, is that the GSCD assets are bid, the commercial assets are bid, and the PPCA assets are bid. They're 3 distinct entities. We have nothing to do with PPCA except working in concert with them. But PPCA really doesn't need to have anything to do with the GSCD assets except working cooperatively and together on. Irrigation is another challenge, and that is one of the subsets of the work group. But in a short time that they have been involved, they've already got a map. Where's that master map? That outlines the community similar to, I don't see one over here, our town center map, the big one we have, and it outlines what is commercial, highlighted for anyone to see, what is PPCA, and what is the other assets of the GSCDD. We made overtures to our president's group because we'd like to get to the point where every single community has a representative on this group, and that we can consolidate some of the duplication of effort, if you will. And the very last thing is, in the course of establishing this is available for anybody to see after this. But as you can plainly see, we have different colors on it. And those colors coordinate to who's doing it. GSCDD, Community Association, or our commercial projects, and they're specific colors. We are now investigating these areas to determine if we really have the right to work on it. In some cases, the answer, thankfully, is yes. But there's been other cases where we are working on private property. We don't have the authority really to do that work. So now we got to dot the I's and cross the T's. The point is not to point fingers that we did something wrong in the past, but the point is no one's ever looked at this before. And we've got a professional manager with 15 years at it. This is new information to them. It shouldn't be. I'm sorry. It shouldn't be. But now it's going to be fixed. And we will get grants of easement from each and every homeowner or association or whatever has to be done to make it legal and right. But I got to tell you, spending money today on a private property, our attorney in the district has already told me that's a no-no. And he wants to claw back the money. And we told him, no, we're not doing anything. We're not changing a single thing until we all understand it and get a path forward together. But the very fact that they've got these kinds of initiatives started, plus the budgetary discipline that's going to be required, demonstrates to me as an individual that this is the right path to go. Residents are very active, very, very interested in doing this. And all we want to do is get out of their way and support them. Nothing will be done by a work group that's not approved by PPAC. Nothing. And nothing will go to the board until it goes through PPAC. Nothing. But I totally agree with you. It is of interest to all of us. We welcome PPCA contribution and participation with the work group. Okay.
You welcome our contribution. We are under contract and have a responsibility to do it. That contract is in place. You welcome our contribution, Bob? What you're trying to do is change that contract. And yes, the district has certain authorities under certain conditions to change it. Don't treat us as you welcome us. You're under contract with us. The district is, and by the way, that contract doesn't even mention, not one word in that contract talks about the existence of PPAC, let alone LWG. Doesn't exist in that contract. So if we're going to change that contract, let's sit down and negotiate the change to that contract. Let's talk about what volunteers are going to do to the complex irrigation system. I'd love to have a conversation with Tony about the indemnities you will provide us. Tony is expert on that subject, and you know it. It's very complex to change this. It may be the right idea. We will engage with you on that idea. It's not a slam dunk. It is not. The Ponds Group, a number of people led by you, did a marvelous job with the Ponds Group. I'm not the first to acknowledge it, but I've acknowledged that continuously for years. There are many differences between stuff that happens over the 24/7 time period and a project-based Ponds Group. Just because that was done with excellence doesn't mean this is the same thing. Not the same. Could it be done with excellence? It could be. Are we willing to talk about change? Yeah. Are we willing to just receive change dumped on us? No. Are we separate organizations? Maybe. We serve the same constituency in part. The district serves constituency 3 times larger. We all serve all the residents of Pelican Preserve. This is dangerous change if it's unplanned. Planned and executed could be very good. Let's get on with it. Let's plan it.
Rich,
I'm not going to just receive it.
Rich, are you basically saying that the landscape work group cannot plan it without PPCA?
Pardon me?
Are you saying that the landscape work group, who have certified people on it that are landscape people, cannot plan this without PPCA?
Well, when I say they can't plan it without the people who have been doing it for the association, which is Castle Group, no.
How much has
here's
Castle?
something, John, it's been done for 18 years in a row. Now take a group, call them the 8 smartest people on earth. And they're going to come in and from a clean sheet of paper, decide to plan it without talking to the people who've been doing it for 18 years. It's possible. Sure, it's possible.
Why are we saying?
It's lunacy.
Why are you saying
Other than
not
being
talking to
lunacy,
them?
it's possible.
Rich,
I mean,
I appreciate what you're saying. And we are a new group. We are a group of experts. We are a group of people that have lived in Pelican Preserve for years. We are a group of people that have seen landscaping deteriorate over the years. We have reached out to Castle Management Group. We have reached out to your organization. We talked with a former COO about landscaping. It's not that we haven't been there and we haven't been present. We have tried passionately to get engaged with the community association. That has not happened. Why it hasn't happened, I don't know. We have also been involved with putting a contract together. We were asked to help the CDD, who did an excellent job putting that bid package together. We were involved with the reviews and interviews of all those companies. One of the primary things we were interested in asking these companies was, will you work on a plan for the future, a 5-year plan? Answer was yes. That was a key component in our interview process. Will you work with us on a 1-year plan? The answer was yes. Will you engage our volunteers? The answer was yes. How can you help us? Any way we can. The communication has been excellent. We had a meeting this morning with Ameriscape. Question was asked, do you know what the property lines are and the boundaries are in Pelican Preserve? The answer was no. They have never gotten that information. They don't know what that information is. There have been lots of loose ends that we have uncovered. And I don't want to go to yesterday. I want to look at from today forward. What can we do? We bring an awful lot to this table. We have financial people. We have 3 professionally trained horticulturists. One ran a very successful landscaping business up the road here for years. He can look at a plant and tell you what it is just probably from the smell of the flowers. We have expertise that nobody has had. Castle Management hasn't had that. Your group hasn't had that. There has been no 5-year planning. There has never been a presentation to PPAC since I've been on it as to what we could do in the future. All we ever get is, oh, we have a contract. And in fact, we had 4 contracts. We had 2 of them that went back to 2014 or 16. Never been reviewed, never been changed. Just 3% increase. That's just normal. Keep going. We have brought an awful lot to this table already. We have made big changes. An example is after Hurricane Irma, we had to redo Cypress Grove Boulevard. Ameriscape came in with their typical quote, here. Fine. I asked a question. I just was curious. Why so much money and what are you doing? Well, we're putting in the contractor type plants. I got a hold of, well, first of all, PPAC asked me if I would get involved and I was happy to do so. I went and talked with the University of Florida Extension Office, Dr. Stephen Brown. I had him come out to Pelican Preserve several times. Nancy Olson joined me where we could legally work together. And we went through with Dr. Stephen Brown and we reviewed that landscaping project that was proposed that we were going to just say yes to. Well, after the first walkthrough with him and Ameriscape's comment was, I guess I'll drop the price about $10,000 because he has a better plan. We reviewed it. He came back out a second time. Again, Ameriscape met us. We went through. We saved this community probably about $25,000 on that quote because we had the expertise and the input to do it. We didn't accept exactly what Ameriscape gave, and we performed a great job and saved the taxpayers a lot of money. We can do the same thing. In fact, we've already started working on that for Prado Drive, and I'll call that from circle to circle. We've already landscaped that area. We've already put a plan together, and there's been a big push from the Prado community. They don't have good landscaping on that drive. It's the ugliest drive in the whole community. We're going to change that. And our goal is to put Florida-friendly planting in there. Takes less maintenance, will be colorful throughout the year, and be an example to the rest of the community. We have an intersection up there at Cypress Grove Boulevard and Pelican Preserve Boulevard where all that bougainvillea is. They have looked like crap for most of this year. No leaves, no flowers, no nothing on it. We don't have the money to just go dump that stuff. When we became a real group, we had a maintenance budget only, not one dime for anything future. PPAC, good or bad, has never looked at the future when landscaping. We got our contract, 3%, let's go, we're fine. That can't stay anymore. We have been insisting we need a good plan. Gateway has run into tremendous problems with landscaping, and they're spending thousands of dollars to try to just take care of the issues that have developed over the years. We have the same potential problems brewing in Pelican Preserve. I have not heard the board in any meeting I've gone to mention landscaping. I haven't seen Castle Management take any positive steps for the future. It's just been maintained. I do think we have the right resources. We have the commitment. We've got an incredible amount of volunteers that want to go out and investigate and look at stuff. We have a Meriscape set up to train those people so they do it properly. We've just reestablished a reporting system that will benefit not only the community association and their contract that Castle Management is handling, but we've separated the items so that you will know exactly what's going on, which will benefit your group. It'll benefit us, and we can maintain the projects that are going on, the costing that's going on, the activity that's happening. And I think we bring to the plate a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and experience. And it's not that we're naive about what's been going on in Pelican Preserve for years, because we've been there, we've seen it, and been disappointed in some cases. The irrigation system is run by Meriscape, and they do a good job. There's been some maintenance done on that recently, a couple years ago, actually, to bring up some of those pedestals. We're very much aware of all of that. And they are willing to work with us in every way possible. In fact, they told us they embrace our energy and our activity and wanting to work with them, because one of the issues that we faced in even picking a company was a Meriscape. Who wanted a Meriscape at Pelican Preserve? How many people say a Meriscape? Well, they do a lousy job. You know what a Meriscape's answer to that was? Nobody has walked around with them. Nobody has guided them. Nobody has managed them. And they have done, as they said, bare bones contract work for all these years. Nobody came to PPAC and said, you got two contracts that are 8 years old. You got two contracts that are a little bit newer, but there's nothing in them. They're bare bones. You should consolidate them. Why didn't the management company come to us and state, guys, you got a problem here. That's what we're paying them to do. And that didn't happen. Scott, yes, he came at a meeting and caught me off my shorts with his proposal. You know where the proposals and the ideas came from? From my conversations with Scott. We brought up the 5-year plan. We brought up a 1-year plan. Right now, we have focused on a contract. We focused on maintaining what we have. That's what we do. We maintain what we have. Nobody has thought about tomorrow. We are. We've already been looking at that. I have a man who's just chomping at the bit with all kinds of ideas that we can do to improve it. Our goal is to put a budget together this year, present it to these folks here, and see if they will put some money in above and beyond our daily operating expenses and give us some funds to start working on a 5-year plan. That's not going to happen. Any arborist or horticulturist you talk to will tell you, you have damaged goods in your community. It will take you 5 years minimum to get that done, because you clip a little branch off of a branch and then you clip a little bit more. So you get it back to where it's supposed to be. If you drive in the Casella community right now, you'll see a bunch of trees along that, what I call the bridge. They're all going to die. You know why? Landscaping. There's been, from what Scott told me, 3 different landscaping firms. And what they did was they had posts coming up for irrigation and posts to support them. They never took the straps off. Those straps are still there, so deeply embedded in the bark. The next high wind, they're all going to go boop, boop, boop. They're going to break. It's $10,000 of damage. It's just incredible what can be done and has to be done and has never been looked at. You walk around the community and you'll see posts still supporting trees. Those posts aren't supposed to be there for more than 1 year, and they've been there for years. There's a lot of stuff that can be done and has to be done. Our group, our volunteer team will be able to identify those and bring them to our attention for us to bring to Castle Management. Do we want to work with you? Yes, we do want to work with you. Do we want to work with the Architectural Control Committee, who doesn't really have a whole lot of insight on landscaping? Yes, we do. We want to work with the communities. We've told them all we want to be transparent. Landscaping goes up and down their roads. We handle the monument flowers, not the monuments, just the flowers, the vegetation. We want to work with everybody and be inclusive. We have reached out to you and have not gotten anything back. And I say reached out to you. We've reached out to you through Castle Management. We reached out to you through your former COO. Where that all went, I can't tell. It's out of my control, but I know what I do have control of. I know I got great people that are just chomping at the bit to get moving. And the thing that they want most is money and a budget for a plan that they can start making our community look a lot more beautiful, be more resourceful, take advantage of modern technology and move forward. And yes, that's for us today, but it's also for the people we want to sell our houses to. We have to do this work for them. It's the future that we're really doing. My dad planted a tree when he was 80, and I said, what the heck are you doing? You're not going to be around to see it. He says, I don't care. Somebody will enjoy it. Truly, we can do a great job with a hands-on workforce, and we do want to work with you. We would love to work closer with you. I don't feel we've gotten that warm, cozy feeling. So,
Did I take a turn?
yes, you may.
Yeah. Joe,
So, one, sounds like we're in violent agreement, Joe.
I agree.
What we're saying is, we got to work together, plan how it gets done, and plan for the future. We're in violent agreement. That we didn't have that in place before and running, I don't know whose fault that is, Joe. Doesn't matter.
Missed opportunity.
Pardon me?
Missed opportunity.
Whatever. You're ready to start working together, and we're ready to start working together. So we're in violent agreement.
Yeah.
Rich, I
we
have
are.
a question.
Me,
How do we develop a long-term plan when we can't really set up reserves for landscaping, things of that nature? And Joe and the group are really looking at capturing every dollar we can that would be reinvested in landscaping. We had a lightning strike last fall that took out 6 very large palm trees. We had enough left in our budget to have those removed quickly before the end of the year, but subsequently nothing else has happened. So how do we do this when nature beats us up, gives us a punch in the nose, and now we haven't planned for that?
I'm Bill Sirico. I'm one of the directors on the PPCA. I think you've just hit on the crux of the message, and with due respect to Bob and to Joe, what we're trying to differentiate here is several different elements of execution. The O&M agreement between the association and the district sets long-term planning and capital investment in the hands of the district. It specifically excludes us from taking that action. One of the reasons I think why Scott brought a proposal to you all was that he recognized that was a void that hadn't been met.
Only after we.
Well, can I finish?
You can, but
thank you. No, you took a long time. I'd like to take some time now, please. Thank you. Secondly, the second aspect of this is execution. Execution in the contract we have, day-to-day execution is set aside to the association. Now that can be changed. But the problem you have is you can't have the landscape operations answering to more than one boss. It simply doesn't work. I think you would recognize you can't have a contractor answering to more than one authority. Current contract puts that authority with us, with the association, day-to-day aspect. Third issue is the wonderful advice that Joe and his group can provide to us all. And we're suggesting that a solution to this conundrum, if you will, is that the landscape working group do just that. Concentrate their resources on the advice they can give as observers and good counsel to both the district and to the association. We'd love to cooperate with them to do that. We'd love to cooperate with them and come up with a plan for long-term capital investment to renew the resources in the community. But we think it would be an inopportune for us at this point to move day-to-day operations away from the association. The residents in the community look to the association to control the quality of life within the community. We all know we've got lots of masters here and lots of people who collect fees and have control over certain aspects, especially infrastructure. But the reality of life is that the resident looked to the HOA. So what we're suggesting here is that there is a path to cooperation, that Joe and his LWG confine themselves to observation and advice, give good counsel to the PPAC and the PPCA on what we should do to make things better, to put together a solution for long-term capital improvement, but lead day-to-day operations to the people in the community who the residents of the community expect to exercise day-to-day operations, and that's the association. And that's what the contract says right now. The contract splits those three responsibilities. It splits capital improvement to the district. It splits day-to-day operations to the association, and it provides for an advisory council who can provide advice and recommendations to us both. And I think that's what we're asking to do. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to make a quick comment to that, Bill. You know, I certainly understand where you're coming from, and I think it's well received by this group. However, when you suggest that the residents count on the community association to handle these types of things, I'm not very tenured on this particular group. It was my understanding that PPAC was set up to help be an advisory group to Gateway, and that it should be our responsibility to manage Gateway assets. So that's my.
PPAC was set up to communicate the needs and desires of Pelican Preserve to the Gateway Board of Supervisors. That's why it was set up. That's its mission, and it's very important to do that. Understanding that the district has responsibilities far greater than Pelican Preserve, including managing the utility. And that's why PPAC was set up. And maybe we're having a little bit of debate of what it is that we need to perceive that residents don't want. Don't know. I think Joe and I are in agreement. We both think landscaping is pretty important. Today's landscaping and tomorrow's landscaping. The real answer is we all got to work together. I mean, so we can fight here for an hour, but when we get out of here, we all live in Pelican Preserve. We got to be working together.
I totally agree with that.
For an hour, we can still get out of here and work together.
But to comment on your interpretation of what PPAC is for, I guess we'll have a disagreement on that because we were specifically charged by the board for landscaping, security, ponds and wetlands. And we budget for GFCD assets on those three areas. And we listed every initial contract. The initial contract came out of this group way back when in 2008 or 9. So yes, the PPAC, which I was, a founding member, we left the landscaping and the security with the developer because they were doing it for free. The developer did not charge us for that. Whatever it was in our dues. Okay, flash forward to the last change. The last change had a specific line that used to say these assets would be managed at no charge for administration and management. The new line says we will charge you, we being PPAC, CA, sorry about that. PPCA will charge the district the $93,000 specifically for administration and management. That, my friend, is the golden opportunity that by putting that with a work group, that's $93,000 they now have today to better the community, not to have duplicate management. The management is simply watching the administrator, whoever does it. We give a contract to Ameriscape. It is not significantly different that they would watch it versus them watching it. But them be volunteers and be free. So we're, I don't know why we're arguing to pay somebody to do something that we got residents putting their hands up, say they want to do it for nothing. If it doesn't work out, now to the legal parts, and that was a valid point. There's going to be a motion made today for PPAC to recommend to the GSCDD that we change the daily operational management and administration of landscaping to our work group. That's going to be, now they'll either approve it or they'll reject it. And we're only talking GSCDD assets. That's the only thing we are talking about is GSCDD assets. So if this board says, or this PPAC says, yeah, we buy into that, we're going to try this. Doesn't mean we can't turn it around a year if it doesn't work. I fully expect it to work, but stuff happens. We still will work just as cooperatively regardless. However this ends up today, the Landscape Work Group and the Pelican Preserve Community Association and Castle, like it or not, we are hand linked together and we are going to do whatever is the best for our community. This is really just about doing the best for the community. We've always been trying to do that. I think we can do it cheaper. I think they can do it better.
Bob,
Yes,
one quick question, a tax angle. If it goes through the CDD, isn't that?
There are some things that really applies. I don't know if this does. I guess I'd have to ask. Because I think all these contracts are with the GSCDD.
Yeah.
They're not with them.
That's right.
So the tax benefit we've already accrued.
So what? Then it's so much beneficial for us to keep it here, right?
Well,
Keep it
in my humble opinion, I just think we can do a better job cheaper. That's all. It's as simple as that.
And I agree.
That's the facts are in front of you. I don't think we disagree on what the facts are. It's just how do we move forward operationally to the benefit of our residents? Now, everybody in Pelican knows if they have a problem with their pond, who to call. There is not a problem with that. And when they go to Castle, they forward them to us immediately, which they should do. And they also come in over the district. And again, all those calls go to Xander and the work group. I don't really see this being a big difference in the future. If we do landscaping this year, everybody will sooner or later understand the whole program. Then we'll put out plenty of notifications. And if we evolve to the point where security goes next year, that would be wonderful too. Again, that's just my humble opinion. Then we're saving $93,000 a year. Instead of paying somebody else to do things we're going to do for nothing, we take that same $93,000 and we put it into the future items. And Bill, to your question about the forward planning and reserves, PPAC we put $365,000 a year into reserves. Now that's mainly capital reserve. I don't think it's been specific. I don't know the last reserve study whether was landscaping included in that? Okay, so there's an opportunity again. We got to do it because I totally agree it needs to be done.
Bob, are you almost saying that $93,000 can go as a budget?
Well, it's a budget item now. It's a line item now. So if we didn't cut anybody's monies, if the money we're giving them, of which they pay them $93,000, we keep, now we've got $93,000 for safety and security that we don't currently have it allocated to anything other than management. So that's $93,000 you can put wherever. And to be honest, let's say it's 50,000 landscaping, 50,000 security for talking 45, whatever. So that would immediately become upon the beginning of the next fiscal year. You're not going to change current fiscal year, but beginning in October in the next fiscal year, that's a $45,000 kitty for them to start with for forward planning.
Yeah.
And you've already got, I think it's 36,000 for the community and another 18 or 12,000 for commercial. We have some forward advanced money put aside. I wouldn't call it a reserve, Bill, but there's money to do replacements and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not a lot. Now, one last thing, and I'll shut up because I don't want to be up forever. Sure, please.
The $93,000 is the tail. The planning is the dog. Don't let the tail get ahead of the dog. Put some planning together as to how we're going to do this. If there's net savings to the residents that come from it, wonderful. Don't say, we think there's going to be savings, so we're going to start this so we can plan it. Well, start planning. Start planning. Joe and I are even in violent agreement on that.
That's what got us here. The planning, the start plan, the opportunity to save that money is where we're here. So it's not like it just popped up.
I don't know that there's an opportunity to save a nickel.
If we're not paid, then where's the money? If they're not paid for their services, you don't see that as a savings?
It depends on what Castle will be doing after we make this switch. They're not going to change the front gate. You're measuring the saving without a plan. That's crazy. It's crazy. Let's plan it first. You think the saving, let's say they're just saving you $50,000. We got how much risk you going to take to maybe save $50,000?
What's the risk?
Well, I think you got it back.
Okay, I respect that opinion. The only thing I will say is the 93,000, I can't describe it anymore because all it is a line item. I know that we are paying for.
But before you, the CDD, through the people who pay for it, the members of Pelican Preserve paid the association $93,000. And you paid
that.
Before you did that, the association charged that $93,000 to the people who live in Pelican Preserve. Wasn't a net cost to anybody. The same people paid it. Before you make a big change because of this erstwhile savings, let's put a plan in.
Well, what was the purpose of changing it then? Actually, we're off base, guys. I'd like to talk about landscaping. I'd like to make.
Can I make
Never.
Can I make a suggestion here? We are not going to solve this today.
Phil, I would really like to just make a comment here.
Why can't we?
Yeah.
We get a motion.
I'd like to make a comment. Rich and I are very much in the same concern. We both care about our community. The O&M agreement is for daily operations. And we are here also charged with long-term planning, and it's much better to have the daily operations and the long-term planning under one roof and have it all encompassed in one group that's got their fingers on all these pies instead of having it separated. And for that reason, I would like to make a motion, and I'd like to make a motion that the PPAC recommend a change to the O&M agreement to the Board of Supervisors. The change is to move responsibility for day-to-day landscape operations and management of the landscaping contractor to be moved from PPAC Castle Management to PPAC Landscape Work Group. The change would be effective as soon as it's practical, and it would only apply, and actually the O&M agreement only applies to Gateway Services District properties. So I would like to get this moving and get moving in the right direction and be able to go back and tell my crew, we're ready to go now. We're going to start our budget. We're going to start the long-term planning, and we've got some plans to put into effect right now that have been funded. We want to move forward and get this going. Nothing has been done in the past, and it could have been, it wasn't. What could have is gone. What we know we can do, we'll be successful at. I'd like to put that motion forward and ask for a comment, a resolution, or second. Give me a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, John seconds it. Okay, now let's have a discussion.
Okay, first of all, could you read your motion again?
Yes,
please?
I'd be happy to. Make a motion that PPAC or PPAC recommends a change to the O&M agreement to the Board of Supervisors. The change is to move responsibility for day-to-day landscape operations and management of the landscaping contractor, which would be Ameriscape, to be moved from PPCA Castle Management to PPAC Landscape Work Group. This change would become effective as soon as practical and only apply to GSCDD properties.
Okay, a question on your motion then. Are you saying that you are taking the Ponds Group model, I'll call it that, and with these words, you're basically making this the same thing for landscape?
We are using the Ponds Group as a model. We have put together a charter. We have an organizational chart, which should all be in your package. And from that, we will develop it in a manner that the Ponds Group has done, yes.
So in a word, yes. In a word, yes. Good question.
Thank you, Bob. But please, I'm addressing the maker of the motion.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so my understanding, and realize I'm new to this board, my understanding is that the Ponds Group basically runs all the ponds. I mean, they're the ones that determine what work needs to be done. They're the ones that inspect the work. They're the ones that issue the contracts. They're the ones that negotiate the contracts. Are you saying by the wording in your motion that that is what you want done for the landscape
Yes,
area?
yes.
And have you run your wording by anybody to make sure that that is correct?
My group's in agreement with it, and a member of the CDD is, yes.
I'm saying a lawyer or something, somebody that makes sure that your wording will accomplish what you want to do.
I think our wording is like any other motion that's made.
Let me suggest that in order to make this change, we are going to have to change the contract, the O&M contract. And so just making the motion doesn't do the trick. So
Okay.
somebody's going to have to sit down and figure out to whom, what's going to happen here. I think we're getting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit in terms of trying to get this done without deciding exactly what specific things, specific tasks are going to go to one of the, Bob, Bill had already raised his hand. And yeah.
I would suggest to you all that the motion is flawed. Under item 8 of the contract, the district can remove or add facilities to the O&M agreement. They cannot modify responsibility. Under item 14 of the contract, any change to responsibility requires mutual agreement of the parties. So while this motion is offered, it does not accomplish the goal that Joe would like or Bob would like to accomplish. So you can take landscape out of the agreement entirely, but you can't say leave landscape but change responsibility to the AC. That requires mutual agreement of the parties. You can take it out, you can add it, but you can't change responsibility unless we all agree. I'm not an attorney, I just know how to read.
Okay, then I would have to amend my motion.
To answer that, and very specifically, is the work group is making a motion, and if it's approved as written, it goes to the board. At that time, Tony will, whatever the verbiage is that needs to be put in, will do it if the board agrees. There is notification clauses and there is termination clauses, but this is fundamentally CDD assets, CDD revenue, and CDD decision. And the board can, if it so chooses, with proper notice, terminate the agreement. We don't need, whatever it is, there's a time, whatever it is. Nobody said to do it tomorrow. It says as soon as possible. But whatever, I beg your pardon?
So can the association.
That's fine. All I'm just saying is if this goes forward.
How are you going to get access to our irrigation system?
I've waited 4 years to say this. You're out of order. That was funny. That was funny.
Wait a minute.
That was funny.
If he tells me I'm out of order.
Okay.
But
you're interrupting me, but I have the podium.
You're not running this stuff.
Ooh,
Okay, who's running?
I'm at the podium. I thought I had the floor.
Please.
No, Bob.
But anyway.
You're not just the supervisor. You're not a king.
Are you going to?
Yeah.
Rich, would you let him finish what he wants to say? And then-
So that's where I'm coming from, that there's a process and an approval thing that if PPAC advances this, then whatever is required to answer, Kyle's question by the board and by the board's attorney and whatever the notification systems are, but it gets the ball rolling. It gets the ball rolling.
Don't know where it'll go.
Okay.
The O&M agreement that you brought up,
Yes, sir.
is that the one that Tony and I have been doing for all these years?
Yeah, that's the same one.
And there's no problem with Tony and I getting together like we do every year that this has to be discussed and reviewing it.
Sure. All I'm saying is that this particular resolution, as it was worded, can't be enacted. Now, if Joe would like to change the way he worded that resolution, we could probably get to what Bob wants to do. But if you just took that resolution the way it was and sent it to the district would have to take it back because it's inconsistent with the terms of the contract.
All right, how would you recommend that that be changed?
Well,
I'll let Joe ask that.
I'll do it. Okay, so I would
Mr. Chairman.
change, let me just
Yeah,
reread it.
I
I'll
would,
read it again.
Mr. Chairman,
yeah, I think, yeah, we've read, Carol.
I think in principle, I would like to move forward with this, to create this. I am concerned that the wording is not correct to do that. Is it possible that we could take a 5 or 10-minute break and get proper wording from somebody?
I don't know who that somebody would be. We're not going to catch Tony Piers at this time of day.
I'll just comment again. I don't know that, we're expressing an intent to the board. The board will make it legally right. If we're trying to just get a sense of PPAC. Because I agree, it's got to be right. It's got to be legal. It's got to be all that other.
That's
But
correct.
we don't need to make sure we're down in the weeds on that today. We're trying to get a trend and a mindset that if PPAC wants the board to move forward on this, to make this change, that they will do whatever has to be done in concert with the community to make that happen.
Yeah, Carol, I share your concern. I think we're moving forward a little bit too precipitously here. My suggestion would be that we withdraw the motion, but that we put together a group to decide first what tasks are going to be done by this new landscape group and what tasks are going to remain in the contract, and then and have people who are on both sides of the equation, if you will, participate in that effort to put together something. I don't know that we need to do this today or this week or immediately. I'm concerned that we do it right. I'm also, frankly, I wish Scott were here because he might have some insights into this that the rest of us don't. I think we should put together a group that represents both sides. Unfortunately, I guess we've got two sides to this effort, and look at the specific tasks that are being performed and what we are going to include for the landscape work group and what's going to be remaining, what's left over, if you will, if we decide that we're going to move forward with this. Because there are certainly tasks to which everybody agrees, not the day-to-day, but the long-term planning. I think Rich and Bill would agree that Joe's group is, a good group to do that. But I'm concerned about, are there pieces of this that are going to be in the wrong place, if you will?
Specifically where? And specifically where you're saying the pieces?
I don't know, John. What I'm saying is there are a lot of tasks to be performed. By at this point, by Castle. And the question is, what do we want to move and what do we don't want to move?
Just GSCDD.
Just what?
Just GSCDD.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which I,
The written right here. That's everything that's GSCDD says.
well, no, Joe's motion only talked landscape.
Correct,
GSCDD, that's all we're talking about.
correct. Just,
Well, that means you're gonna leave pine straw,
That's-
annuals,
no.
replacements, tree side replacement, tree trimming. You can leave that all with us?
Bill, that's all landscaping.
Well,
that's-
but
you wanna-
That's not what your resolution said. You make the
How about
changes
if I read it
You're gonna
this
miss a
way?
lot of stuff.
Okay. how about if I make a motion that the PPAC recommends to remove all landscaping and associated activities from the O&M agreement to the Board of Supervisors. The change is to move responsibility for day-to-day landscaping operations and associated programs and management of the landscaping contractor to be moved from PPCA Castle Management to PPAC Landscape Work Group. This change will be effective as soon as practical, which gives us time then to work things out a little better, which is good. But it's the management of the landscaping contractor, all activities associated with the management landscaping contractor is what it
So
says.
we are running out of time.
Motion on the floor.
Yes.
So I think PPAC is about to make a serious mistake. We should all be here to serve the residents of Pelican Preserve. To me, present them with a plan. It's much better service than to have this debate in front of the whole populace. Very destructive. So you want to go ahead, play with your motion, take it through 8 iterations, debate what's the best practical time. Bob will call his colleagues if he's allowed to talk to them, and they'll debate, and we'll debate, and we do a great disservice to the residents of Pelican Preserve. Plan and present to the residents something that's planned and agreed upon. Present them a pile of junk with a lot of different opinions, stir up everything. Great disservice. Great disservice.
Rich, I'd like to ask a question. We've had, over the last several months, had a CEO that was a short-term person, and a lot of money invested in trying to help offload some of the responsibility for the community association. Help me understand why you wouldn't embrace something like this. Are you concerned about losing $95,000 or something? I don't quite understand your reticence about like moving forward with something like
I'm
this.
not worried about $95,000 in a minute.
Then help me understand why there's so much pushback.
First of all,
I don't get it.
There's no savings in $95,000. That is great mythology. Since you don't have a plan and you don't have any timing, how can you give me a number what's going to be saved? That's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous.
Well, if you won't answer the question, then it's going to be really difficult for us to have negotiations going forward.
That's going on to a brand new committee of volunteers to do it, a bunch of unknowns and risks. You want to take those risks? I think that's foolish. You want to present controversy to the entire populace? I think that's a great disservice.
One question.
It's your credibility that's on the line.
Rich, one question. Rich, you're saying their Pons Group have a tremendous amount of expertise with
Of doing what, John? Of defining projects, good projects that worked, putting aerators in all the ponds. Those are projects. Wait a minute. You asked the question. I want to answer you now. Things don't happen Tuesday morning at 4 a.m. where something breaks. A project, a series of projects done well doesn't mean it's a model for something that goes on throughout the 24/7 cycle. What are the plans for that? John, you don't know what they are. but you're about to vote. Why don't you know what the hell you're voting for
We're
before you
voting
vote?
We're voting for him to put that plan together at his group.
No, you're voting to recommend that the supervisors change the process before you know what you're changing to.
I think we know what we're changing to, Rich, and the fact is, we
You
are.
don't know what you're changing
Rich,
to because you
Rich.
don't know when you can get it done. You know,
We have a,
you're on this course influenced by my good friend Bob, and it's a course mistake. And we will tell all the supervisors that, and Bob will probably influence them.
we have a motion on the table. I would solicit other comments from the committee members about the motion on the table.
The motion on the table is the first one he read.
That's right. Joe, are you amending that motion?
Yeah, I'm amending it to, as Bill has pointed out.
Then please
To
read
go,
the whole
I will-
motion to get.
Okay,
one
make
more
a
time.
motion. The PPAC recommends to remove landscaping and landscaping activities from the O&M agreement to the Board of Supervisors. The change is to move responsibility for day-to-day landscape operations and management of the landscaping contractor to be removed from PPAC or PPCA Castle Management to PPAC Landscape Work Group. This change will be effective as soon as practical.
That's the motion.
I'll second it. I second the first one.
Further discussion? If not, we will move to a vote. Individual voting on this.
Did you ask me for my opinion to vote?
Well, no, I just asked for the whole committee. Do you have something to say?
No, I'm ready to vote.
That's
Yes.
done. That's done. Yeah, that's done. Okay. I'm gonna poll the committee on this. Yay or nay on this motion. We start with Randy.
A.
Carol.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Okay, and I am gonna abstain. So the motion passes 5-0. I have to, Joe, I think you're gonna have to present to the board. Or, you're gonna have to come up with a presentation that explains the changes that are being made, what we're actually doing. I mean, the motion is global, but the changes have to be specific. What tasks are going to be moved from one place to another place if the board approves it. Any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like a written copy of this motion as soon as possible.
Okay. Joe. Okay.
Joe Georgia does that. You don't. You gotta come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can skip the landscape work group.
Bob, hey,
Doug?
Phil, we can skip the ponds group. I got a written document in front of all of your, I mean, right now it's 2.5 hours. Out of respect the time, if anyone has any questions by the report that you have in front of you, you can do that later.
Yep. I was going to request that you allow us to skip that. We have the meetings for May. Do we have volunteers? I'm not sure. I don't have the. Yeah.
Well, think about the May 12th meeting. That'll be the meeting that this thing is talked about, right?
I'll be at that one for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
May
Joe
12th
take that.
May 12th is Joe. And May 26th? Oh, no. Yeah, no, it would be May 19th.
I can do that one.
Carol will do. Okay,
5/19.
5/19. Any further comments, audience comments, requests? Or are we all commented out? The next date?
Actually, that's May 5th.
Oh, May 5th?
May 5th. yes.
May 5th, okay, it's May 5th. And then Carol.
And the 19th, yes.
5th and
Then I'll
9th.
do the 19th.
You'll do the 19th, okay. Hearing no other, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, wait. One more thing. You and I both attended the last CDD meeting.
Right.
And they talked about that their first meeting in June, they need to present their,
Not to exceed budget.
yes, not to exceed budget. And I was wondering if this committee wants to have more meetings in May to talk about the budget and submit the budget to them by that June date that they have. We have a regular meeting, what is it, the 12th, I think it is?
Yes.
May 12th
Yeah.
of our PPAC. And I was wondering if the 3 subcommittees would have time in that basically 1 month period to meet with their groups and propose a budget to us that we could look at our May 12th meeting. If we need subsequent meetings, then to have a workshop or whatever to go through that, we could. But the idea is trying to get everything to the CDD board by their time of June, whatever the date was. I think it was like early, like 2nd or something like that.
Yeah. Well, June 2nd, except that their legal requirement is June 15th.
June
So-
15th.
So they may stretch it.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if the 3 subcommittees can meet and bring forth a proposed budget to us for for the PPAC's consideration by the May 12th meeting.
I can speak for the Ponds Group. We can have that done.
We got to include Castle because they got.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In
Yes.
fact, Castle really has to kind of lead the charge on
Right.
that, but except for landscape. Yeah.
Landscaping costs.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know if
Okay, I will.
if any of the
I
subcommittee
will
chairmen
have-
had concerns. with
I'll
that.
have, if people are in agreement that we should do that, and I think it's a good
I think
idea,
we should.
I will have Georgia poll you on available dates that we can hold it as a budget workshop. People in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Consensus?
So on the 12th then, do we want to maybe add an hour onto the meeting? That we would go into a workshop mode as opposed to the regular PPAC meeting?
We should do a separate meeting.
I'm wondering if a separate
Yeah,
meeting.
do it as a separate
Oh,
meeting.
An hour
Okay.
might not be enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
as I say, I would have Georgia poll you to find out
Okay.
what available dates to have a separate meeting
Got it.
for a budget
Okay.
workshop. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
With that, I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, I heard a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. The meeting,
Actually, my grandkids second.